Created borderline. Let's talk about it. Um, Today's video is going to be about. I'm going to be interviewed and asked questions about borderline personality disorder. Um, so just listen. Hopefully this will give you some self-education and some more knowledge. And if you have any questions, put it in the comments below, and I will go over them as they come in and answer them as best as I can. Also, for my podcast listeners, send me a message or visit my website at borderline or beyondtheborderline.net, and we're just going to get straight to it. Sorry about the trash look I look today, because I don't care, but this is Taylor. She will be giving me the interview questions and interviewing me today about borderline personality disorder because she wants to be educated on the topic as well.
Okay. So,
Get in there more.
Oh, right there?
Yep.
Okay. What triggers BPD for you or in general borderline personality disorder?
So for me and the education, the self-education I have gotten or have done and the studies I have read is the number one thing is fear of abandonment. Which last week, or the last video I did was about borderlines and fear, and that's always number one. Along with that is fear of rejection and fear of failure. A lot of us tend to run when we think we're failing, even if we're not, and it's made up in our head, we tend to run away from that stress. Fear of abandonment is the number one trigger for, I think, all borderlines, and that's something that I think all borderlines have. You only have to have one of the 9 criteria, and I think everybody with borderline has that. Me also, I think that like imaginary abandonment issues affect us all too, and a lot of times looking back and reflecting now that I know my diagnosis and have done all this research, I think that I made this abandonment up in my head a lot more than I realized, and well, I didn't realize at all at the beginning, but the more I learned about myself and the issue, I learned that the good people that were good and treated me kindly and actually were okay people, I didn't know. I thought that wasn't real because I never felt that before, so I made up this own shit in my head, and that was a big trigger too.
Okay. Because usually with my anxiety, because it's not similar to BPD, but I know that what triggers my anxiety is when I'm out in public and I can't, when I think of something in my head and then it just is at the forefront of my head all day. Mm-hmm. So
I have that issue too, but it's a little bit different. I recently there's a topic of having the social anxiety disorder because that's what it's called. Because I don't go out anywhere. I don't think I have that problem. I just think that I needed to take time away from the social world, and I don't trust anybody anymore, so that has a problem with it. But once I have something in my head, whether it's made up or not, it'll stay there all day too, and I will constantly think about that, and I will make every story, every angle of this. And
you'll view it from every angle. Is it hard to contain feelings in public, and do you ever feel like you can't express them properly to other people?
I know I can't express my emotions properly to other people because they don't understand me. Something that's so small to them, to the majority, is huge to borderlines. You may not be able to associate with how I'm feeling, or you could have stood me up one time that you were supposed to come over, and I could have, before diagnosis, I could have had an extreme meltdown. You hated me, you were talking bad about me to everybody, and I believed 100% that was real, even though 90% of that was false. And even at my jobs, I would think that they talked about me all the time, and that's why one of the reasons why I went through so many jobs is because I would quit thinking things like that. So
Yeah.
that's a issue.
Sorry. Do you think people should learn about BPD and a like variety of mental illness in general when they're in high school, and to better help teenagers deal with their emotions? And because a lot of people experience trauma in those impressionable years, do you think that could help people?
That's funny you asked me that question, because I'm literally, that's what my blog post is about today, is self-education. Yes, I believe every person at a certain age, like 12, I think is a good age, every person should be taught about mental illnesses, how to react about them, people you love, people in your life, how to advocate, how to
support
yeah. and raise awareness, and most importantly, BPD is, and this isn't me saying this is actual facts, BPD is the worst disorder and mental illness you can have. For one, it's so stigmatized that you're shunned and turned away, but it's still to this day some therapists will do that. And it's more, it's been studied more, it's been researched more, and there's been a lot put into it since the 80s. But it still is stigmatized today. Like if you look up BPD, the first articles you find on it are all negative. There's you have to dig for good information, for things that are good about people with borderline, like empathy and being able to read people's feelings and reflecting those feelings. And like my mood can change dramatically by a person's presence walking in the door. If they're in a bad mood, I can feel that shit. And that's intense. When somebody's sad or somebody's lost, I pick the brokenest people to become friends with. Why I don't have any now, because broke can't fix broke, right? I have done that my whole life. I picked out the most broken, messed up individuals because they're just as broken and messed up as I am, not ever knowing that they were broken or I was broken, So that's a big deal. I think that health education in schools should definitely imply a whole semester or year on just nothing but in high school, but they should start learning this like 12, 13, and along with sex education, this should be in the curriculum. So yes.
And this goes into what you're saying about therapists like kind of shunning like BPD diagnosis. And I'm going to add on another question to it, because
ask me all the questions you want.
How hard is it to find therapy? And do you think a lot of people go getting misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Okay, so we'll start with finding therapists. Okay, in the city, there's a lot more. In cities, big cities, there's a lot more mental health workers, for one. In general, there's a lot more therapists, there's a lot more psychologists, there's a lot more people that have studied DBT, and which is very important for, it's called dialectical behavioral therapy, and it is very important for borderlines. It's actually one of the only proven working methods to get a borderline more like the majority. I don't want to say we're completely cured ever, because even those that no longer have the diagnosis because they don't have the 5 criteria still linger on 1 or 2. So yes, it's a lifelong thing. And you have to continue to work in order to keep it away. Keep yourself at like the majority. But yes, you still get shunned. There's still, like I was just saying, there's still a lot of therapists out there that will not work with a borderline. But like I said, bigger cities, there's a lot more. There's groups, and this is like so important. And I want to be in one so bad, just so I can connect with people who understand me. But they don't offer that anywhere here in this small town or small area community. I finally did find, I was telling you today, I finally did find somebody in Effingham who does the DBT, and I was so excited about getting in, and I'm still I have to wait till August now. So it's finding a therapist that works for you. That's another thing. People with borderline don't trust, and when you don't trust, you don't actually open up and talk. And so that's a big thing. You have to connect with your therapist. And a lot of us don't. A lot of us takes time. And, like my therapist now, I love her to death. But I feel stuck with her. I don't feel like I've hit my plateau and I'm not moving anymore. So I want to, and I want to, as I was telling you earlier, I'm in a hurry to be better or cured or whatever you want to call it. And it's going too slow for me. So I feel like all I do when I go to therapy now is just talk and then leave. I don't feel like I'm progressing or learning. So that's why I'm excited about getting into DBT. What was the second half of your question?
Do you think that some people, because they, like with BPD, because they can't open up and trust their therapist, do you think that that oftentimes that there can be a misdiagnosis, like bipolar disorder, instead of BPD?
I'm just gonna be very blunt about this. Almost every article and every person I've read about having DBT has been at least misdiagnosed once. I have been misdiagnosed my whole entire life. I didn't get a diagnosis until I was almost 32, and that's after I wrecked my life and done all the damage I could possibly do, I think, which is not true because I could have done a lot worse, There is a lot of people that are borderlines that are sitting in prisons because they didn't get a diagnosis like they should have. It is misdiagnosed because therapists and everybody around you, psychologists, everybody, they don't want to give you that diagnosis because you're the hardest patient they'll ever have to work with, and they know that. Bipolar is one of the main things, depression, anxiety, and these are all comorbid diagnoses that people get with the borderline.
And they exist within borderline person.
Yes, but they exist differently. Like bipolar is a hypermania and a mania, and it's up and down roller coaster. Depression is a constant thing. You're constantly depressed, and it can last for months and months. Okay, so a borderline like me, when I get depressed, I don't have highs and lows. I just have like a middle ground constantly. I mean, I don't ever leave that ground as far as that goes. But like my depression, I get really sad, I get really depressed, and it usually only lasts a couple hours, a day at most. That's with borderlines. Borderlines, it's like the trigger or the episode. I like to call it episode. So when I have an episode, I'm usually fine after 4 or 5 hours. But in that 4 or 5 hours, I don't want to live. I can't do this anymore. And those are things I actually say to myself is, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm done, And those moments are scary because I already know what I'm capable of. So my my last suicide attempt, like that was real. And like, so when I come out of that depression and that sadness, that cold, hard, fucking, excuse my language, that feeling though is like the worst feeling you can ever have because you literally think life is not worth living anymore. When you come out of it, you're like, why was I so upset about that? You realize. And I didn't.
And then do you feel guilty for
being like that? Yes, I do. Oftentimes with my boyfriend, he gets the brunt end of that. He gets that. To see me like that, and he's never seen me have an actual I don't want to live, but he's seen me hyperventilate, and that scared him. And now before diagnosis, I didn't have these moments of clarity though, because I didn't even know what, I just knew that I felt like that, and it was real, and whatever happened was real, and there's not another side to the story. There's not, you made me feel this way, and this is what happened, and that's, post-diagnosis, I have that clarity because I'm like, and I have time to reflect, and when I do reflect, yes, it's I feel guilty, I feel bad about myself, I feel worthless, and so it just kind of makes it worse, the whole situation altogether.
Do you feel like getting your diagnosis helps you better, notice when your symptoms are approaching and how to better, handle them in a way, or at least, know that this is happening, so maybe I should confront it?
I thought I heard somebody. I think it was just Daisy. Okay, I'm so glad you asked me this question because yes, I am a whole different person since my diagnosis, a completely different person. I had started changing in January of last year, like distancing myself from people and like being finding this happiness in being alone. And then when I moved back home, I was constantly around my boyfriend all the time. So he is my favorite person. There's no doubt about it. He's my favorite person. And I do depend on him way more than I should for things like emotional support. He's a man. He's a man's man. You know what I mean? He's a man's man. So he's not good at those things. He'll take care of me. He'll make sure I have food to eat, car drive. You know, he'll do whatever it takes to take care of me. But emotionally, that's and I'm alone. Since my diagnosis, I have realized I don't think before I act. So now I think about everything before I do it. If I feel like I'm under pressure and I'm not okay, like I have to walk away from the situation. I don't lie anymore, ever, about anything. Not even small stuff. Like today at Walmart, for example, I was just like, fuck it, let's just say we're out. But I couldn't do it because instantly I felt guilt. And so even if it's the blunt, honest, cold-hearted, worst thing I've ever come out of my mouth, it's still got to be the truth. And I have had to do that a time or two, and it's not okay. Well, it is okay because I don't want to be a liar, but at the same time, sometimes that brutal honesty can hurt people's feelings more than it needs to. But I don't know the difference yet. Like, I went from not thinking about anything, acting out just over my emotions. They were so intense. I didn't care. It's not like I didn't care. I don't have the right words to explain that.
You just you didn't understand what it was going to do to the person on the receiving end. There was just too much.
You don't even, but it's not, we don't even think about that. Like, now I do. Now I see there's, every action has a reaction. And, but you don't even think about it. It doesn't even come up to your head. It's like, and it doesn't feel like you're doing anything wrong. It just feels natural, and it just feels like, I didn't realize anybody was different from me. And I didn't realize, like, something else. I'm emotional. I've always been emotional. You've been around me long enough to know that. I could cry at the drop of a hat, and it just sucks. And, like, I thought something was wrong with me because I cried all the time, and I didn't want to cry, and now I just want to go get my tear ducts glued shut. But that was the only thing that I seen that was wrong with me, because the people around me didn't cry like that. The people around me didn't feel like that, feel that intensely about things. And I thought that was what was wrong with me. Like, I didn't even realize anything else was different from anybody else. The only thing I ever noticed different from me than you, or, the world, is I was a crybaby.
Yeah.
So, trying to understand that, and that was the hardest part. Now that I know different, now that I know I feel more intensely and more deeply than you, or the next blowjo down the road, or whoever, now I kind of understand. But then again, it frustrates me because you'll never truly understand me. Does that make sense? It's like, it's not a two-way road or whatever.
And is there anything that you wish that you had been able to find or notice before you got your diagnosis, or maybe when you were...
Sorry, it's the dog again.
When you were experiencing like your ups and downs, do you feel like do you feel like you ever could have found like information for yourself, like, before getting a diagnosis from...
Okay, yes. You want to know how I got my diagnosis?
Yeah, like, if you...
This will explain everything I think you're asking.
Yeah.
Okay, so my boyfriend talked me into getting the help I needed. And I was like, okay, I'll do this one last time. But I was sick of being forced to take pills that later I found out wouldn't even do me any good. It would actually make more harm than good. And I was tired of them telling me I was depressed. I knew that wasn't right. I'm not depressed. I just have depression, like stage, I get sad. I feel worthless. I feel all these things, and nobody's addressing that. Nobody cares about that. And, I'd been just to almost, that was in 2009. So just a year ago, I was in a hospital for how many ever days for a suicide attempt. I was in a psychiatric ward after that for 6 or 7 days. Like I was tired. I've already told the doctors, and I've told them I've been, how I felt, and all they did was slap me a prescription and send me on my way. So, and that's something I've talked about before on my podcast and YouTube channel and my blog. I was never taken seriously. I knew that I shouldn't be that sad. Like, and it all comes back to sadness, my emotions. Everything else I didn't know about. I never heard of BPD in my life until September 2019. Never heard of it once. I go to meet my new therapist. We met one time, and then I go back the next time, and she gives me a list of things to research. She didn't say nothing. She takes this home and she makes me do the research. And I was like, this is stupid, blah, blah, blah. And then I came across the very last one on the paper. I came across it, and it was borderline personality disorder. I'm typing it in, like, I didn't even do the assignment when it was due. This was an assignment for my therapist. Didn't even do it when it was due. I literally, 3 weeks later, when I finally walked in there, and she would not go over it with me until I did it. Okay, so I finally researched BPD, and I'm like, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me. Like, big bright lights. Okay, so I was super excited at first. Because I learned what BPD was, and I learned that it fit, and I didn't I felt like I had a home for who I was.
Yeah.
So that answered your question, right? Okay, so just going on to that a little bit. A couple weeks later, I was still researching. I was reading. It was about a month. I was really into it for a month. I read 4 books in a week. It was stupid. I was my boyfriend's nerves. I was on his nerves bad. And then I got really depressed because you read all this negativity about borderline personality disorder and how it's lifelong, and some people, it can take people 10 years to recover from it and get to living somewhat of a normal life. 10 years. I said, I'm 32 years old. I am 32 years old. I want to be better now. I am not waiting until I'm 42 years old to have a normal life. And it did set me back for a while, and I missed a couple of appointments, and I had a setback, and I was against it. Well, I had started seeing psychologists too. So my doctor was like, she's like, I don't know what to prescribe you. I'm going to send you to a psychologist. So she sends me to a psychologist. At first, I didn't even really care about where I was at or what medicine I was taking. When I met her, she was completely open to what I had to say, how I felt. And one of the things she wanted to prescribe me at first was a stimulant, Adderall. And I told her, absolutely not. I'm not taking that stuff, blah, blah, blah. So we literally try, I think it was 5 medications between now and September, and nothing worked. In between those 5 different prescriptions, I did a genocyte test. Okay, that's what I was telling you about. The genocyte test, it takes forever to come back, and so I'm still trying medicines throughout, waiting for the results. She gets the results back, and genotype testing is for everybody. This is not a paid advertisement or endorsement of any kind. Genotype testing, if you can afford it, get it done. If you have medical state insurance, they pay for it, get it done. Comes back, SSRIs, drugs like Paxil and Prozac actually reacted badly to my body, and I can't take them. So every time I've taken them, it actually made me worse than I was. Then Xanax and that type of drug, benzo, whatever the heck they're called, can't take those. I have the opposite reaction. I don't rest. I stay stimulated and don't sleep. Same with Benadryl. I mean, it's literally broken down to Benadryl, over-the-counter medications. It'll tell you what you can and can't take. That's why I'm a big believer in Aleve. That's the only one. I can't take Tylenol. It gives me rebound headaches. And same with, I need the naproxen is the only thing that will work in my body. So it literally breaks that down for you. And it's very, very important. I recommend it for everybody because if I would have gotten the opportunity to have a diagnosis when I was younger, there's so many things that, and it's in the genotype test, there's so many things that I could have avoided and maybe my life, I wouldn't have made the mistakes that I did with my life. And so, yes, that's very, very important. Anything else?
I'll, do you think that, going forward, that do you have any goals that you wish to meet with your BPD? Like, do you have anything that, like, you may not be able to do now because of it, that you're trying very hard to overcome and that you're, like, working up to?
Well, personally, I have a lot of goals I have set for myself. So those would ultimately be a part of that. But as far as things I can't do right now, I would like to be able to face my degraders, people that have wronged me. And for one, I want justice for those things. Because of what I went through, abandoned and left alone by myself. And that's the only reason I want justice for those things. But not in a revenge type of way. I don't like
a cathartic way.
Yeah, like I just want justice, like actual justice.
So you can like
move on and just be like peace.
Yeah.
Be in peace. Also, when facing these people, I want to have control of my emotions. And I know it's not going to happen. As I have court on the 20th for my kids. I know that I'm not going to be able to keep it together because I'm an emotional person and I have to accept that. But my ultimate goal would be able to not let them see me in pain. If you see me cry, that's fine. But like the pain in my, that I wear on my face, that everybody does. I don't want them to be able to see that and use that against me because they have power and can manipulate me. I want to be a little bit colder and not so nice to people because that's how I get walked on. That's how and it's not necessarily their fault.
But you let them cross the boundary too much.
I don't have boundaries. I don't know what boundaries are. And that goes for myself and for them. I'm learning, and I don't cut myself anymore and stuff like that. But I was blaming the people for so long, but it's not all their fault because I allowed it so much that it was like that's how I represented me in my life. You want my last dollar? Sure, have it. I can't afford to pay my rent this month, but you can still have this dollar because I don't want you to go without this dollar. And I allowed that. I was giving that. I was doing that. So that I'm taking responsibility for that. And it's really hard because I'm really angry with, with how my friendships and all that went is because it was always me giving, them taking, and never giving it back. So, that's how I see it. That's how I feel it. That's what's true to me. But understanding the other, like I did allow this. I never set boundaries. I did give, and never said a thing. So I have to take some responsibility for that. It's very hard, as I said, but
yeah. But do you think it's important that you're learning to like forgive the things that you've done and like the things that you said earlier, sometimes like you're like, oh, like a little lie, like you'll correct yourself for it. Do you think, are you getting better at forgiving yourself for like small things like that, and working to improve them?
Do I forgive myself? No. I punish myself daily, whether it's accidental or on purpose. Like I will literally find myself like lost in space talking shit about myself, or even out loudly. I sometimes am like, you dumbass, for little tiny things. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself because of one reason and one reason only. I don't know how much like the damage I may or have caused with my kids. My parents damaged me, and I never meant to damage them with a suicide attempt. That I don't know how damaged that is. That's why I want them. I want them in counseling. I want them going to counseling with me, as a group, as a family. As I don't know if I told you or not, but I've invited them and their dads, and they don't show up. I'm always going to be their mother, and even if they don't want to see me or they choose not to, they should be able to know the facts and know that this is what I'm trying to do and they're not getting to them. So,
Right.
If they want, I might get emotional. If they want to if they don't want to be around me, that's their choice. But it needs to be their choice and not somebody else's. And their parents and the people that are around them should not be bashing me because they don't know the story. They don't know how I was feeling. They don't know my diagnosis because they don't care and they haven't tried. So the big thing is, I wish BPD was had more awareness and people knew about it more, and maybe I wouldn't be sitting here wanting to scream it on a rooftop.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions that I could come up with.
Okay. Well,
but I think you're doing a very good job of with your book. Shameless plug. And like talking to people that might feel alone in the world, that like, because there's a lot of people that can't afford therapy, or maybe they're like 12 or 13 and their parents are like, no, you know, we're not paying for that. So I think it's good that you can come and like talk very openly about something that is really vulnerable, and I think you should continue to do that.
I will. Thanks. That means a lot to me because that's the first time anybody's ever said something like that to me. Sometimes I feel stupid when I'm out here talking to myself through a camera.
Well, because like I feel like the internet has grown so much, and like for me myself, I know when I was growing up, there were like content creators, maybe not about mental health, but like I like video games, and they would play video games that like were very calm, and like if I had a bad day at school or like I just had a bad day at work, I would come home and I would watch them, and just knowing that like that there's people out there that also will talk about their problems, and like at the end of the day we're all human and we have mistakes, and sometimes bigger than others, but like it's good to know that like you can go anywhere on the internet now and you can find a resource of like something to help yourself or feel good.
I agree too, because it took me like watching people do YouTube videos on DBT or on borderline and researching it, and then finally like feeling like I have purpose. Like that made me feel like I had purpose, and I knew once I like found my passion for I've always been passionate about writing, and being able to put these two things together gave me purpose, and now I feel like I have purpose, and I feel like my purpose on this world is to advocate for myself and others and educate as much as I can. I don't know everything, and I have the tools to learn, like with advocating for suicide, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, they have lessons for me to learn, and it's all across the board. And if I can't,